ready whenever you are ready.
Awesome. So my name is Kalista Shields. I'm a creative technologies major, and I have a double minor in communications and computer science. I've been working for BITS for 4 years. I've been a web dev for them. I helped build Berry.edu. I helped with the legacy transfer over to the new site. So I learned a lot about web dev and the process of design, thinking through that. I've been on the forensics, the speech and debate team. I won my first national title recently, which was very exciting. And I am very passionate about assistive technology and how accessibility and design can really work together. So because of that, I've decided that my theme is developing accessible medical technology through physical and digital fabrication. And I have 3 projects along with my capstone project that I think show this theme really well. So for my first project, it's actually the first project I ever made as a CRT major. It was for my intermediate project for CRT 101. I have ADHD, and that makes it really hard for me to remember to take my medication and, more importantly, to refill my medication when I run out. So I decided to make this tool that's basically just a button press and LCD that tells you how many pills that you have left. And when you get to under 7 pills, it reminds you to refill your medication. The design constraints that I had for this is that I had to make it fit on the top of the pill bottle. And I also wanted to have a tactile element in it because that can really help with memory, especially for people with dementia or with ADHD. So when you add that tactile element of pushing the buttons to make the number of the pill goes down, it makes you more likely to remember it. This was also my first experience with Arduino and Fusion 360, which really set me up for the rest of the projects that you're going to see today. So it was a lot of Arduino. It's basically an Arduino Uno that is hooked up to an LCD screen and 2 buttons. One of the buttons, you press it every day and it makes the number of pills go down. When it gets to 7, it says refill your prescription. And then the other pill fills it back up. And that's basically what it does. It was pretty simple, but it gets the job done. And then I 3D printed the encasement when we had the old Da Vinci printers. So that's why it looks a little rough around the edges, but it did the job, and I was proud of it. Now, going on that, I became really passionate about medical devices and more technology that shows visual indicators of health. So for $3.99, me, Mike Canfield, and Lewis Denver decided to build the handstand helper. This was the fall that we had come back after the COVID spring semester. So one thing that was on our minds was, of course, COVID and how we would sanitize ourselves before using shared resources. In our case, we decided to take the problem space of the library because we have a lot of shared materials in there. And you don't want people who don't wash their hands or don't sanitize their hands to be touching the books and the materials that you're using. So we decided to design this device which has an LCD in it, as well as an ultrasonic rangefinder and an IR sensor that helps determine who's coming into the library and if they're sanitizing their hands. We put an LCD screen on there because we wanted to show how many people were entering and how many people are sanitizing with a visual element that everyone could see, hoping that it might peer pressure people into sanitizing their hands or show that people are grosser than you would expect. We also put it in 3 locations at the entrance of the library, by the bathrooms, and by Java City. And we wanted to see if the variation in location would also affect sanitization rates. We also built a website. This was my first time using PHP, which was a lot of fun. So how the hand sanitizer helper here worked is that the ultrasonic rangefinder would detect if someone was coming into the library, and if they would use the hand sanitizer, the IR sensor, the laser would break, indicating that someone had used the hand sanitizer. The data was collected via an SD card and entered manually into a MySQL database. Then I used PHP in order to create the backend part of the website, and also using charts.js, I wanted to show an aggregate data analysis of when the sanitization times were. So this one up here, it shows when peak sanitization was. People were more likely to sanitize their hands in the morning. I guess it makes sense. People are getting more tired and they forget to do things later at night, as well as a proportional analysis of how many people sanitize their hands when walking into a building. And what we found is people don't sanitize their hands, which is kind of gross, especially during the pandemic. So this was really my first experience using PHP, using that back-end part of web development, and I hadn't really gotten a chance to use that. So that was a really fun exploration of that. And also using 3D modeling to help build the device itself, and using the Arduino, using all those skills together, ended up making a really fluid and really cool project. This is my favorite project that I've ever made for creative technologies. This is the Cosplayed. It was my final project for the robotics and CNC class that I took with Chris. The reason that I made this, a lot of my friends are cosplayers, and a lot of them also happen to have mobility-based disabilities. They use things like canes and walkers and wheelchairs. And what they had been telling me is that when they go to cosplay competitions, a lot of them get penalized for using mobility aids because they're not seen as canon compliant, which I found to be awful, because you shouldn't be penalized for using something that you need to walk and to get around. So I was commissioned to make a guitar cane that was for the Danganronpa character, Ibuki Ryota. She is a musician, so I decided to make a guitar to go along with it. So I'll scroll over here to kind of go into the process. This was all designed in Fusion 360, and Ruth actually helped me do this. We were partners for this project together. One of the big things that we wanted to focus on was ergonomic design. So we incorporated a lot of rapid prototyping concepts into our fabrication of the Cosplayed. So we used the laser cutter in order to end up with the final design of the handle. We would put it into Slicer and have it do individual slices so we could build it up. And it would feel like the actual handle with the laser cutter without having to 3D print it. We'd have a bunch of people test it in their hands and mark with markers where it was uncomfortable. We'd quickly go and adjust it in Fusion and then make another one until we got our final design for the handle. One of the big aspects of this is the way that it is convertible. It can go from looking like a guitar like this to looking like a cane like this. And this was done by 3D modeling dovetail joints that go on two ends of the cane handle. They use a friction fit, but the friction fit is really tight and it works really well. It can actually hold up to 300 pounds, which I had by having a bunch of people at different heights and weights test it and see if they could put their weight on it and walk with it. And we were able to get up to 300 pounds. I wanted to make sure that, because a lot of the times plus size people are ignored in the quest to make things more accessible. So I wanted to make sure that that was something that I incorporated into my design for this. I also wanted to make it light up a little bit, because something that we do in Hackberry is always slap a bunch of unnecessary NeoPixels onto things. So on the side here, you can kind of see it, but the NeoPixels on it, it's a finite state machine with a couple of different options. One's a static color, one matches the colors of the guitar, and then the one that you're seeing now is the off state. I really loved this project and I loved how it turned out. One of my favorite projects that I've ever made here. And I got to use the crawlbot, which is something that I had never used before. And it was a really interesting process to use that CNC machinery in that way. So taking all those skills, I decided to make my capstone project. I decided to do the advocacy pathway, and I made the companion. Basically what it does, my problem statement is that people with mobility disabilities have difficulty determining if a venue is accessible before attending a large event. And this can be really problematic if you use mobility aids such as a wheelchair, a walker, or a cane. If the building isn't accessible, you're pretty much stuck. Not really a lot that you can do. So I built this as a request to a couple of my friends that go to conventions to see if users are able to get into accessible portions of a convention hall. Since this is an Android app, it can pretty easily be transferred over to other phones without needing to go through an app store. And I really wanted eventually to get a larger collection of user data so that on the website that I would be able to show a bunch of different venues to help more people. There's two parts to this project. I made both an app and a website that goes along with it. So I'll be presenting that in those two parts. The first part and the most important part, I think, was the app.
Yes.
The app takes data from the of the phones, specifically the accelerometer, the GPS, and the camera. The phone is attached via a 3D printed camera mount, which actually broke when I was practicing this presentation, or else I would have it up here. The bracket broke, which kind of sucks, but good thing we have documentation. basically what happens is if the Z value on the accelerometer is above the threshold of about 10.2, which indicates that there has been an obstacle met, like going upstairs or like a high bump or something that you wouldn't be able to get over, it takes a snapshot using the camera, and it has all the data with the accelerometer data and the GPS data, so you can locate where it is. Readings are also taken every 3 seconds in case there is a false positive or a false negative. I thought it was important to get that and just get base values so I could see when I was thresholding, which would be finding out which values are the abnormal values so I could take the snapshot. It was important to get those so I could get more accurate readings. And you can kind of see here with the diff, when it lifts up, the screen turns black, and that means that
A fourth and a 9.
Now with the website, I have more pictures on the next slide. I made the website completely myself. No Bootstrap, no WordPress. This was all my HTML and CSS. I really enjoyed it to try to flex my web development muscles because I haven't been able to do something completely from scratch in a long time. So basically what the website does is I entered the data from the pictures into MySQL. And the MySQL databases, by using PHP, I was able to extrapolate the raw data onto the page so I could view the abnormalities. And this is what the page looks like. One of the important things I wanted to have was an element of interactivity. So when you hover over the portion of the map that is inaccessible, like you can see in that GIF there, which was around the stage, what had happened there is that there were tables in the way and a chair got in the way so the person couldn't move around it. And those tables were there for the convention, so it was like a permanent obstacle for the setup of the venue. You hover over it and you can see the image along with the data from both the accelerometer and the GPS there. I also wanted the normal floor map to be there to have that interactive element. Another important thing that I wanted to include on the website were the accommodations that the venues offered. A lot of the websites for these conventions don't show what accessibility options are there unless you call. And I thought that it was important to add that to this site so it's all in one place and you can see where these accessibility bottlenecks would be. So for my future plans, I'm going to be staying at Barry for the fall to finish up my communications minor. But after that, I really hope to get a job in prosthetics or in other medical devices. While I'm still here at Barry for the next semester, I'm going to continue making mobility aids, hopefully things more like the cosplayed. A couple more people have wanted those, so I'd love to dig deeper into that during my time here. Oh, so this summer I have been interviewing for full stack, so that's both front end and back end web development positions. To continue web developer, and hopefully I can have that as an alternate.
It does, I have 100 degrees.
Prosthetics or medical devices don't work out, but either way, it's a way to think creatively and use design solutions. And I think Creative Technologies has prepared me really well for whatever the future may hold. So that's it.